In recent decades, an unsettling rumor has circulated in the rural community of Littlefork. According to local stories, a group of individuals known as alternates have been abducting and impersonating the town's residents. At first glance, these imposters appear human but possess bizarre physical features such as bulging eyes and elongated limbs. Dr. Emma Wilton, however, was not deterred by these rumors as she had another mission in mind: to search for the elusive ivory-billed woodpecker. Once considered the largest woodpecker in the United States, the bird was believed to be extinct by most experts, including Emma herself. Despite the lack of official sightings since 1941, some locals claim to have spotted a large bird resembling the ivory-billed woodpecker with shiny black feathers in the area. Emma traveled to Littlefork alone and made her first stop at the town's only hotel, which had an old, creaky porch wrapping around the front of the building. There, two elderly men sat in wicker chairs smoking cigarettes, giving Emma blank stares as she approached. Inside, a stout woman sat behind the reception counter and let out a sigh as Emma approached, as if annoyed to have to work. "Can I assist you?" she asked in an indifferent tone. "Yes, I booked a room under the name of Robert Monroe," Emma replied. The receptionist blinked slowly and said, "You're not Robert Monroe." "No, but the room was booked for 2 people," Emma pointed out. "Yes, that's correct," the receptionist said. "I am the second person. My name is Emma Wilton," Emma explained. "I see. And where is Mr. Monroe?" the receptionist asked. "He decided not to come," Emma replied curtly. "Why not?" the receptionist inquired. "That's personal," Emma replied, forcing a smile but still clearly annoyed. "Well, I can't let you stay in the room since it's reserved under his name," the receptionist said firmly. Emma looked around the empty and shabby hotel interior. Apart from the 2 men outside, the place seemed to be deserted. "No offense, but this hotel doesn't seem very busy," she noted. The receptionist shrugged her shoulders and replied dryly, "None taken." Emma persisted. "What are the chances that someone would come here and correctly guess the name of a guest?" The portly receptionist pushed a greasy strand of hair behind her ear and gave an apathetic shrug. "It's company policy," she said. "You can call Mr. Monroe yourself if—" "No," Emma interrupted firmly. "You must have his number on file. Please call him." The receptionist let out a sigh and picked up the phone to dial Robert's number. While they waited for him to answer, Emma wandered around the lobby. She stopped at a bulletin board that had only 2 papers pinned to it. One was a flyer for a local concert 2 months ago, and the other was a crumpled notice about a missing girl named Ashley, who had disappeared 2 years ago at 16. Emma felt a pang of sadness for the girl, but she knew it was not her concern. As the receptionist dialed Robert's number a second time, the 2 old men from the porch came in. "We don't get many visitors," the first one commented. He was missing most of his teeth, and the smell of tobacco hung in the air around him. "It's not safe around here," the second man chimed in. His lips were thin and shriveled, stretching across his face. He pointed to the missing person poster on the bulletin board. "There's a killer in those woods. He skinned poor Ashley, and she wasn't the only one," he said. His friend shook his head and said, "That's not true. There was no killer. They say she was seen in the neighbor's barn. But she was nothing but a cheap imitation, a fake, an alternate." Emma had heard about them from the local stories, but she didn't have the energy to debate with the old men. "I appreciate your concern, but I'm only here for the forest," Emma replied with a polite smile. "That's exactly where you shouldn't go. It's not safe," the toothless man insisted. "I will be careful. Thank you," Emma replied politely, wanting to end the conversation. Fortunately, Emma was called over by the receptionist, who cheerfully informed her that she could not contact Robert. The receptionist told her that she could leave her belongings and explore the town while waiting for a call back. Emma was relieved as she had enough of the hotel and the unpleasant people there. Emma slung her camera around her neck and decided to start her research with a trip to the forest. The Littlefork Forest, one of the oldest in the area, surrounded the town on all sides. The dense green canopy loomed behind every building and at the end of every street. Although there were no proper entrances to the forest, Emma noticed a small gap in the trees behind the hotel. Being petite, she easily squeezed through the gap. But as she disappeared into the wooded area, she felt a cold gaze on the back of her neck. She turned around and saw the two men from the hotel watching her with blank expressions. Emma didn't pay much attention and focused on her research. After her conversation with the receptionist, she started to think about Robert Monroe. Robbie was a renowned ornithologist like her, a man with a chiseled jaw, piercing blue eyes, and a silver tongue who seemed to get whatever he wanted. It wasn't long before Emma fell for his charms and ended up in his bed. Emma and Robbie had a strong intellectual connection, evidenced by their successful collaborations and seamless exchange of ideas. However, Emma's romantic affections were not reciprocated by Robbie, who saw their relationship as purely professional. When Emma broached the topic of children, Robbie chose to end things in the interest of honesty and clarity. Emma realized that her lack of awareness had led to the dissolution of her relationship and hoped that the ivory-billed woodpecker search would help her become more observant. As she combed through the forest, she noticed the absence of any signs of life, save for the wind and the creaking branches. Knowing that woodpeckers prefer dead trees, Emma turned her attention towards the decaying sections of the woods, where the remains of once majestic oaks and beeches lay strewn about. As the sun began to set, Emma noticed a disturbance in the trees, bigger than any creature she had seen thus far. The trees trembled and cracked as the mysterious entity drew closer. Emma cautiously backed away from the towering, oozing creature, now incredibly afraid. As she lifted her camera to take a picture, she glimpsed the repulsive growths and filament-like hairs covering its flesh. The creature emitted a gurgling moan, and Emma lost her footing on a twisted root, tumbling down a nearby hill. In the fall, Emma's head struck a jagged rock, causing her to pass in and out of consciousness. In her altered state of mind, she had a surreal vision of being carried away and cared for by the enormous, writhing mass of flesh. Though unnerving to behold, the creature showed no evil intent and seemed to take on a maternal role with Emma. When Emma eventually came to, she found herself in a calming cave environment, with moonlight shining through a hole in the ceiling. Yet she couldn't shake the strange and unsettling experience she had just endured. Attempting to rationalize the situation, Emma told herself the creature was likely just a sickly bear, and that her willingness to believe in its bizarre, nurturing behavior was just a dream. Although a bit disoriented from her fall, Emma's rational mind took over, and she assessed the extent of the injury to her head. She noticed clumps of dried blood in her hair and a lingering nausea, which she attributed to the disturbing nightmare she had just experienced. As she tried to collect herself, Emma heard a low chatter echoing throughout the cave. Shadows flickered along the walls, and she looked around for her camera only to find it missing. Feeling uneasy and vulnerable, she uttered a greeting, hoping for a response. But no one answered, and she realized she was alone. Despite feeling sick and dizzy, Emma made the decision to leave the cave and make her way back to the hotel. She hoped that the receptionist would be helpful, and that Robbie had received the message she left earlier. Above all, she needed medical attention and a place to rest. With a deep breath, Emma set out, determined to overcome any obstacle in her path. As Emma stumbled through the deep and winding tunnels of the cave, she stumbled upon a series of childlike drawings etched in chalk. The whimsical images depicted happy families with exaggerated smiles, but there was something decidedly unsettling about their skewed and distorted features. Emma realized that the artist behind the drawings lacked a complete understanding of the human form. More disturbing still, among the smiling families was a haunting sketch of a grotesque and otherworldly creature. Large, pustule-covered limbs sprouted from spotted globes of flesh, and the creature's lidless eyes bulged from sparse, hairy masses. Emma had seen this creature before and couldn't shake the terrifying familiarity of the drawing. Despite her unease, Emma pressed forward through the damp and murky tunnels. She followed deep, broad paths that twisted and turned until she wasn't sure which direction she was headed. Along the way, she passed by cold, inky pools whose depths were impossible to discern. Throughout the journey, Emma's head ached, and she experienced persistent stomach pains, her gut feeling bloated and firm. After what felt like an eternity of navigating through the winding passages of the cave, Emma finally emerged into the first light of dawn. She was disoriented and unsure of how much time had passed in the depths of the cave. Realizing that she had entered the forest from the east, Emma set off in the direction of the rising sun, hoping to find her way back to Littlefork. Suddenly, a menacing roar and the sound of scraping flesh echoed behind her. Emma sprinted into the forest, refusing to look back at the source of the noise. Despite her terror, her aching stomach and heavy feet slowed her down. Finally, when she could run no more, Emma collapsed against a birch tree, taking stock of her predicament. As she pulled up her shirt to examine her bloated belly, Emma was troubled by the presence of striking blue veins threading across her skin. Although there were no visible injuries, she realized she may be suffering from some form of serious internal bleeding that would prove fatal without immediate assistance. In the face of impending death, Emma thought of Robbie and her desire for love and family. But now he was gone, and she was alone, bleeding to death in a forest clearing. Her despair was short-lived, however, as she felt what could only be described as an infant limb reaching out to her from within her abdomen. Emma was shocked and couldn't deny the mysterious sensation she was feeling. There was something inside her, something that needed her help. Emma trembled on the ground, her body racked with pain as the creature waited in the trees. Her mind raced as she tried to understand what was happening to her. Memories of her failed relationship with Robbie haunted her, making her feel even more alone and vulnerable. Suddenly, she was overwhelmed by a strange sensation inside her abdomen, a pulsing and twisting that was both terrifying and exhilarating. As the pain subsided, she realized that something was moving inside her, something that didn't feel entirely human. Desperate for help, Emma stumbled through the forest, her naked body covered in blood. She eventually stumbled upon a small town and collapsed in front of a gas station. The locals looked at her with suspicion and fear, but one kind woman named Martha took Emma under her wing and helped her give birth to a strange, otherworldly creature. Emma was both horrified and fascinated by the creature, wondering if it was her own child or something else entirely. Despite her dire situation, Emma still felt a connection to Robbie, whom she remembered as a genius biology student. She wondered if he would be able to help her understand the strange presence inside her. But for now, Emma was alone, with nothing but her strange offspring and the support of a few unlikely allies to give her hope that she would survive. Emma's heart sank as she looked at the grotesque creature that had just been born from her womb. Despite the child's resemblance to her, there was an undeniable otherness to it. Its twisted limbs and misaligned features made it hard to believe that it was ever truly human. Emma felt a mix of horror and despair as she tried to come to grips with what had just happened. Suddenly, the child opened its mouth and let out a gurgling noise. Emma recoiled at the sound and tried to back away. But Martha, who had been helping her, quickly stepped forward to take the child into her arms. Emma watched as Martha cooed and soothed the creature, a motherly instinct kicking in despite the child's monstrous appearance. As she looked at the child, Emma couldn't shake off the feeling that it was somehow important, that it held some kind of strange power or knowledge deep within it. She knew that she had to protect it at all costs, even if it meant putting herself in danger. With that thought in mind, Emma took a deep breath and steadied herself. She knew that she had to be strong for the child, to protect it from those who would try to harm it. As she stood up and began to walk, she felt a strange sensation inside her, as if something inside her had changed forever. And she knew that, from that moment on, her life would never be the same. As Emma sat in the hospital bed, She couldn't shake off the feeling that something was still inside her, something that she couldn't explain. She knew that she couldn't stay in Littlefork any longer. She needed to find Roddy, the only person she knew who might understand what was happening to her. With a newfound determination, Emma left the hospital and set out on the road, hitchhiking her way across the country. She encountered many strange and dangerous individuals along the way, but she never lost sight of her goal. After weeks of searching, Emma finally found Roddy at a rundown motel in the middle of nowhere. He was surprised to see her at first, but as Emma told him about the strange creature that had been born from her womb, he listened intently, his analytical mind already working on a solution. Together, Emma and Roddy delved deeper into the mystery, uncovering a dark and ancient force that had taken hold of Emma's body. Through their combined knowledge and expertise, they worked to expel the darkness from Emma's body, freeing her from its grip and giving her a new lease on life. In the end, Emma left Roddy and the motel, setting out on a new journey, no longer alone and afraid, but filled with a newfound sense of purpose. She knew that she had been given a second chance, and she was determined to use it to help others who might be suffering from the same darkness that had once consumed her. Emma felt a wave of panic wash over her as she realized that there was someone or something out there that looked like her, that was capable of committing such heinous acts. She didn't know what to do, but she knew that she couldn't just sit idly by and wait for something to happen. She began to research the phenomenon of doppelgangers, looking for any information that might help her understand what was happening. She learned that there were stories of people encountering their doubles throughout history, and that they were often seen as harbingers of death and chaos. Emma wondered if her encounter with the strange creature in the woods had somehow opened a door to this other world, allowing the alternate to slip through and take her place. She couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong, that she was not truly alone in her own body. With a newfound sense of purpose, Emma set out on a quest to find the alternate and confront it. She traveled to remote corners of the world, encountering strange and dangerous creatures along the way. She learned to fight and defend herself, determined to protect herself from whatever might come. Eventually, Emma found herself face to face with the alternate, a twisted and malevolent version of herself. They engaged in a fierce battle, with Emma using her newfound skills and knowledge to finally vanquish her doppelganger. As she stood over the fallen alternate, Emma felt a sense of peace wash over her. She knew that she had finally found herself, that she was no longer defined by the trauma of her past. She was finally able to move forward, to live her life free from the demons that had haunted her for so long.